Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our planning committee this evening. Because you're all here tonight, I will read out our guidelines. Planning committee members of the public are present. Welcome to this meeting of the planning committee. We are recording the meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the council's website following the meeting. Generally, the public seating area are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recording for webcasting or training purposes. I have the discretion to stop or suspend the recording of the meeting, should this be necessary, to maintain the proper running of the meeting. This is a meeting of the council held in public. It is not a public meeting. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Anyone else intending to film or audio record any part of the meeting is asked to do so in a manner that does not disturb the meeting. Please refrain from filming the public gallery or public speakers on items. If the fire alarm sounds, leave by the nearest exit and officers will advise when it's safe to return to the meeting room. Procedure for each item. The planning officers will present their report and committee members will ask any points of clarification. The meeting will allow those who have given notice that they wish to address the committee on a particular application to do so. Thank you. Can I go straight into the meeting now? Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apology from Councillor Emma Callaghan with Councillor Joseph as substitute, and an apology from Councillor Blake with Councillor Mordecai as substitute. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I've got to welcome Mark Cottrell this evening, who's our co-opting member. Welcome. And also, I've got to welcome Martin Mordecai, who's substituting this evening. Welcome to the planning committee. So we've done our apologies for absence. So can we go into declarations of interest in lobbying, please? Is there anyone? Thank you, Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been lobbied on item, I can't get the agenda, but I'm not trying to connect, but it's the Castledon Road one. Some of the residents had asked me where they could access certain documents, and I provided that information as a ward councillor, but I sit here with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I've been lobbied on item 3, 5 and 6. Thank you. I'll go straight into item 3, which I believe is Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to land west of Castledon Road in Wickford. As you can see, outline planning permission with all matters reserved except access and layout are for consideration. This is for the demolition of existing dwellings at front of the Castledon Road. These are number 45, 49 and 49A. Demolition of the commercial and equestrian buildings to the rear and structures under hard standing, and the construction of 97 dwellings with open space, landscaping, car parking and associated infrastructure, including main vehicular access point from Castledon Road. As I said previously, this application is just for layout and access only. All other matters are reserved for a later stage. As you can see in front of you, you have the site location plan. The application site outlined in red spans approximately 6.46 hectares and is located on the western side of Castledon Road in Wickford, near the settlement boundary. It comprises residential dwellings that front onto Castledon Road, commercial premises, stables, paddocks and agricultural land. In front of you is an aerial view taken from Google. The chalet, or the homes to be demolished on Castledon Road, as I said before, they were number 45, 49 and 49A. They are chalet-style homes. They are proposed for demolition. These dwellings sit outside of the green belt, whereas to the rear of those dwellings, so the rear section site is within the green belt. This includes a builder's yard, stables, grazing land and open agricultural land. Access is currently between number 45 and 49 of Castledon Road. This access is proposed to be reconfigured. The site slopes downwards towards the River Crouch, which crosses through the site. The site borders with residential properties along Castledon Road, Southbourne Grove and Studland Avenue in Newhouse Farm and Castledon Road Plotlands. A site with planning permission for 49 dwellings is marked yellow on the plan in front of you, which is to the south of the site. So that was granted back in 2023, early 24, for planning permission for 49 dwellings, and that site is 200 London Road. As said previously, most of the site lies within the green belt except for the dwellings to be demolished fronting Castledon Road. Slide 3 in front of you shows the flood zones 2 and 3. So I've outlined the site there in red, which you can see. The light blue colour is flood zone 2 and the dark blue colour is flood zone 3. Most of the site is in flood zone 1. This slide relates to previous developed land. So the site includes several buildings and associated hard standing. A lawful development certificate was granted last year in 2024, confirming the extensive area of hard standing buildings which has been in place for at least 10 years, marking these uses and development lawful. So it's acknowledged that there is a significant portion of land within the site, which is also greenbelt, is regarded as previous development land, so PDL basically. So that's the red line in front of you, and that is considered to be PDL, and that's been established by the lawful development certificate. In front of you are site photographs. These were taken on site, so you can see walking into the site and looking back towards Castledon Road. There's also images of building materials that are currently on site. As I said, it's a builder's merchants that's been established and has been there for a period of years. These sites are sort of going further into the site. So the site on the a photo on the left-hand side is standing near the River Crouch, looking east back towards the builder's yard. You can see the bridge that goes over the river in the middle photo, and the two photos on the right-hand side are the land on the other side of the river. And the dwellings that you can see there are sort of Studlands and Southbourne Grove, that area of the plotlands. These photographs here to the left-hand side, these are stables. The photograph below stables is looking west, that goes down towards the River Crouch. This is land that's currently grazed by horses. And the photograph on the right is the field next to it, which the horses can access and graze, but it's just sort of left as an open field. The site plan in front of you, so as previously mentioned, layout is for consideration at this outline stage. A primary access route extends from Castledon Road into and around the site, with secondary roads branching off from the main route. Pedestrian access routes are provided throughout the development. Footways are provided at a width of 2 metres throughout the site, including pedestrian crossing points to connect to various parcels and ensure overall pedestrian connectivity. There is a pedestrian-only connection point in the southwestern corner of the site. This is proposed to connect to a recently approved development at number 200 London Road. Additionally, there is another pedestrian-only access point link to an existing alleyway onto Castledon Road, situated between numbers 77 and 88. So that's where you can see the cursor, that's the access there. Although this access already exists, it's currently gated. The proposal is to open this access for public use, enhancing connectivity to the rights of way opposite. So there is a public right of way opposite that goes along the River Crouch on the opposite side of the road. Local residents have raised concerns about the use of this alleyway, fearing that antisocial behaviour could negatively impact their living conditions. As part of this application, we have consulted with Essex Police, Design and Out Crime team. They have not raised an objection to this application. Essex Police welcomes further discussions on the design and layout, landscaping and public realm provision, including management and maintenance, lighting, parking provision, physical dwellings and cycle parking security. So further details in respect of design will come forward in a future reserved matters application. However, condition 44, which is recommended to ensure that a gold award of the Secured by Design for Homes 2023 guide is achieved. The application site currently has vehicular access of Castledon Road, which will be relocated further south to increase the distance between between the access and Elizabeth Drive, where my cursor is in front of you. The new vehicle access will be 5.5 metres wide with a 2 metre wide footway, merging with existing ones on Castledon Road. The carriageway width will remain between 5.8 and 6.1 metres along the access frontage, with suitable visibility displays proposed. Essex County Council have been consulted Highway Authority and they've not raised an objection to this. Additionally, a separate pedestrian access will be provided further north along Castledon Road, connecting to existing footways near the public right-of-way. So what I said earlier, this access here will connect to the public right-of-way, footpath, and pedestrian crossings over the vehicle access road and Castledon Road at the junction will also be included around here as well. In front of you shows sort of a proposed building mix. So the dwellings are organised around a primary route into 5 distinct parcels following a grid formation. Most of the dwellings consist of 2 and 3 bedroom houses, with some 4 bedroom houses distributed across the site in a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced dwellings. Additionally, there is several 2-bedroom flats situated in flatted blocks, and that's located here on the site. Here in front of you is sort of building tenures. So in yellow is the private homes, and in blue are the affordable homes. The applicant is offering 50% affordable. Whilst the appearance is a matter to be determined at a later stage, officers will ensure that affordable units will be tenure blind. Here is just a CGI for you to look at. The site, as I said previously, the site measures 6.46 hectares. 3.86 hectares of this site will be open space. So the development proposes areas of open space throughout the site and along the River Crouch, as you can see there. So the majority of the built form is sort of as you go into the site, and along the river will be sort of the open space, the sud features, and on the opposite side will be a managed meadow that will be open and for public use. Landscaping is a matter reserved for a later stage, and details such as play areas will be addressed in a reserved matters plan application if members are minded to grant planning permission. Here there's just some visuals for you to look at, just to get a feel of what the development will look like should it be built out. There's some more for you there. So these houses front onto the sud features that look towards the River Crouch. And then there's some more dwellings there. The key issues for this application, so as you're all aware, the MPPF was updated on the 12th of December in 2024 and subsequently amended in February this year. The site has been accessed against the newly introduced paragraph 155 of the MPPF, the definition of grey belt land. That is set out in the MPPF at Annex 2, but I'll just read it just to remind you what grey belt means. So the purpose of plan making and decision making, the grey belt is defined as land in the green belt comprising previous developed land and or any other land that in either case does not strongly contribute to any purpose of A, B and D in paragraph 143 of the MPPF. So that's what grey belt is defined as. As previously confirmed, an LDC established part of the site as PDL. The Council's Greenbelt Review 2017 and Greenbelt Study 2023 has been reviewed, and the site's contribution towards purposes A, B and D are low and no contribution to paragraph 143 of the MPPF. Obviously, I've gone into more detail in the committee report. Paragraph 155 also refers to a 5-year housing supply and sustainable location. There is clearly a demonstrable unmet need for new housing across the borough, as we currently have a supply of 1.88 years. The site is considered being a sustainable location, and that will be discussed in more detail shortly. The updated MPPF introduces golden rules. The applicant has increased their offer of affordable housing to 50%. Previously it was 35%, so they have upped it to 50%. The development will provide the necessary improvements to local infrastructure, such as financial contributions to all secondary school places and the health service, as well as others. The proposed development will also provide high quality open space and will open up private land for public use. So in the officer's judgment, the proposed development meets the golden rules of the MPPF. Members should be reminded that officers' primary view is that the proposed development is on grey belt land and meets the other requirements of the MPPF. Paragraph 155, so is not an appropriate development, but that in case that members reach a different conclusion about that, with the consequence that the development is to be inappropriate development, there are very special circumstances that are set out in section 5.9 of the report. We have also looked at the impact on neighbouring amenity. So the closest residential properties to the application site are on Castledon Road, Sugden Avenue, Southbourne Grove and Studland Avenue. Properties on Castledon Road have long rear gardens and proposed dwellings will have a substantial distance from the existing homes. Properties on Sugden Avenue, Southbourne Grove and Studland will back onto the managed meadow, sort of preserving their outlook. The proposed development, with its generous separation distance and boundary treatment, is not expected to negatively impact daylight, sunlight, privacy or overlooking for existing properties. During construction, temporary impacts will be managed through a construction method statement. This has also been conditioned. Overall development is considered compliant with our local SAFE policies, BASB 12, and should not detrimentally affect the amenities of neighbouring or future occupiers. With regards to highway matters, this is also be considered. The proposed vehicle and protection accesses into the site have been previously discussed. Walking distance to Wickford railway station and the high street from the site are approximately 20 to 22 minutes. In terms of rail service, the site is located approximately 1.6 kilometres from the site to Wickford rail station, which provides direct connection to London Liverpool Street and Southend Victoria, including direct connection to Southend Airport. In terms of local school, the site is located approximately 19 minutes walking distance to the nearest primary school, and I think to the nearest secondary school is 20 minutes or 22 minutes. The nearest bus stop to the site are on London Road, approximately 400 metres south of the application site. These stops serve several bus routes, so including buses to Ramsden Bell House, Ramsden Heath, Billericay rail station, and they also travel towards Wickford, Crays Hill, Great Burstead. There's also a Sunday bus service that connects Wickford to Brentwood and Billericay and Shenfield. And there's also other bus services for school buses that take children to Mayflower School in Billericay and Thomas More School in Leigh-on-Sea. A financial contribution will be secured towards bus services, enhancements along London Road corridor to improve frequency and accessibility and routing to and from the site to the service facilities and areas of employment in Wickford Town Centre and Basildon Borough. All proposed houses will have 2 on-plot parking spaces, with some also having an additional garage space. The flatted blocks will meet the minimum parking requirements for the 2-bed flats. The scheme requires a total of 194 parking spaces for the houses and flats, 2 spaces per 2-bedroom unit, and includes 22 unallocated visitor parking spaces, all complying with the adopted parking standards. A condition has been recommended to ensure that the development is in accordance with the vehicle parking space standards. As said previously, Essex County Council Highway Authority were consulted and no objections were raised. Moving on to flood risk and drainage. The site lies adjacent to River Crouch. The Environment Agency mapping indicates that most of the site is in flood zone 1, which has the lowest risk of flooding from rivers or the sea. However, the River Crouch runs through the site and the adjacent land to the river falls within flood zones 2 and 3, indicating a medium to high probability of flooding. The Essex County Council lead local flood authority and the Environment Agency were consulted. The Environment Agency has raised no objection. Paragraph 174 of the MPPF aims to guide a new development towards areas with the lower risk of flooding from any source. Although parts of the site fall within flood zones 2 and 3, all proposed dwellings have been strategically located in flood zone 1. According to table 2 of the PPG, so the Planning Practice Guidance, housing development is appropriate and acceptable in flood zones 1. So an exceptions test is not required. However, as a precautionary measure, the flood risk assessment applies Part B of the exceptions test, and that is set out in the committee report. The flood risk assessment focusing on fluvia flooding, which is rivers, so flooding from rivers, using the 1 in a 100-year flood event as a benchmark. The Environment Agency models flood levels for the River Crouch shows a decrease from southwest to northwest direction. The site is outside the functional floodplain, defined as land within a 1 in 30 year or greater annual flood probability. So for the 1 in 100 year flood event, the in-channel flood levels is 10.26 metres above Ordnance Datum Newland. rising to 10.41 metres above Ordnance Datum Newland with a 20% climate change allowance. All proposed residential units, roads and footpaths are outside this extent, ensuring they remain dry. Considering a flood event exceeding the design event with a 35% climate change allowance, the flood level is 10.44 metres above Ordnance Datum Newland. The proposed residential units will be on higher ground, so these are going to be 11 metres above the OADN, keeping them dry and the residual flood risk low. The risk of flooding from various sources has been assessed, with only fluvial flooding posing a potential impact. All proposed residential units are situated outside both the design flood event and the undefended 1 in a 1,000 year flood event, making the risk of fluvial flooding to the development low. The flood risk for the proposed development units is very low, making resilience or resistant techniques unnecessary. However, it has been proposed as a mitigation in the flood risk assessment that floor levels or floor slabs will be raised by 150 millimetres due to the proximity to the River Crouch. So although there is a low risk of flooding, the development will be built 150 millimetres above, just as it's close to the River Crouch. Additionally, it is recommended that residents sign up to the Environment Agency early flood warning system to stay alert. So a condition has been recommended to ensure that this mitigation is implemented throughout the scheme. The most viable solution for managing surface water runoff involves a series of SUDs, including permeable surfaces, basins and water butts. Due to the high groundwater levels, infiltration SUDs are not feasible, so water will be retained on site during extreme rainfall events before being discharged to the River Crouch at a low rate, with that lower rate than the current Greenfield rate, so that's 1 in 1. Essex County Council, as lead local flood authority, has been consulted and no objections have been raised. They have reviewed the provided information that was submitted with the application and are satisfied that development will not be at risk of flooding. Moving on to ecology, biodiversity and sort of the trees on the site. So the ecological report revealed there is a population of slowworms, grass snakes and common lizards in the survey area that are at risk during construction. There is a recommendation that's been made as part of this ecological report that states that reptiles will be translocated to a suitable receptor site before works begin, following a reptile translocation method statement agreed with the local planning authority. So that has been conditioned. These measures will be secured via planning condition. The applicant has discussed with the council's park and countryside biodiversity officer to establish a receptor site at Wick Country Park. The applicant will fund the creation of a herbinacular and provide habitable improvements covered by the developer and secured through via a Section 106 agreement. So Essex County Council ecologist is satisfied with this agreement, so there's been discussions between the council's officers as well as Essex County Council. Essex County Council ecologist has reviewed all submitted documents and is satisfied with the recommended mitigations, avoidance and enhancement measures that will be secured via planning conditions. No objections have been raised. The proposed development will require the removal of trees and groups of trees within the site. So the periphery of the site will remain as it is. So there's a lot of trees within the site that's being removed. So these trees have been identified as category B or C. There will be a tree removed at the front of the site to make way for the access. However, there is going to be a landscaping condition to satisfy any concerns. So any sort of replacement tree details will be addressed at a reserved matter stage with recommendations for suitable tree planting at the front of the site. It has been agreed with the developer that for every tree removed, 3 trees will be replanted, and this can be controlled via a planning condition. Most trees to be removed are smaller, lower quality or in poor condition, so category B or C, whilst category A trees will be retained. A method statement outlines necessary protection measures before and during development. The council's arboricultural officer has no objection to the removals and have provided protection measures are followed. The Essex County Council landscape officers also recommend a full arboricultural impact assessment, landscape master plan, topographical strategy, soft and hard landscape scheme, play strategy and landscape management plan to be addressed through conditions if planning permission were to be granted. Moving on to agricultural land. According to Natural England website and the Council's Agricultural Land Classification Report 2024, most of the site is non-agricultural land. So there was a map within the committee report that I put in there. So it does show that most of the site is primarily designated for urban use, apart from a small section of the site which is in the northern corner, which is identified as Grade 3 land. But that area of the site is protected due to development, no development in this particular location, as it falls within flood zones 2 and 3 anyway, so you can't develop in that area. So currently the site is being used for residential and builders, merchants and equestrian activities and paddocks. So the land is neither used for agricultural purposes nor classed as such, so the proposal will not result in a loss of agricultural land. It has been confirmed that this land has previously been cut for hay purposes but not for food production. So in front of you here is the Section 106 infrastructure contributions. So as I previously said, 50% affordable housing. There are going to be bus infrastructure enhancements to upgrade the existing bus routes on London Road. There's also going to be a 30-year maintenance and monitoring of the approved B&G plan as well. Monies towards healthcare, secondary school contributions, employment and skills, bus service enhancements, open space contributions, health and wellbeing, the translocation of reptiles, so as I said before about the herb and vernacular creation at Wick Country Park, a RAMS contribution as well as the monitoring of a travel plan. In front of you is the planning balance, so the positives and the negatives that have been considered and outlined for you. This application is recommended to be granted planning permission subject to conditions on page 108 and section 106 contributions. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Katie, for a very comprehensive report and a long one. Thank you. I'll go into clarifications now. Is there any members that want to ask any questions?
Thanks, Chair. With regards the footpath to the north-east that's currently gated and to be opened up, there was no mention at all about its actual location on a particularly blind bend. And if that's going to be connected up to the public footpath leading to Riverside Walk, then there's no mitigations in there for central reservation crossings or zebra crossings to be put across for people to actually cross. So if this is all for access and highways matters to obviously to be designed to join onto the footpath, then I can't see how that is possible without some kind of mitigation through conditional 106 to put in at least an island there to allow people to actually cross onto the public footpath to access Wickford.
So there isn't a crossing there that will connect up to the footpath, because the footpath's a bit further up. Essex County Council were consulted on the application and they didn't raise sort of any concerns with pedestrian crossings at that point of the road. So as far as I'm concerned, there's going to be no sort of conflict if people were to use that road, to use that alleyway, sorry, and cross that point of Castledon Road.
So really, the alleyway without any kind of mitigation or pavement infrastructure around there is a bit negating, a bit pointless, isn't it? Because if you walk down there and you can't physically cross the road because there's no pavements, and it's a lot of kind of built up edgeways. There's no like grass verges to walk on. They're kind of built up into kind of slopes for mainly to people's property boundaries. I can't see how anyone's going to ever be able to access the public footpath without putting themselves at risk on that bend.
Okay. Any more questions for the officers? Mark?
Thank you. On the flooding consideration, where it's saying it's in flood zone 1, however, there is mitigation of an extra 150 mil. Just want to know how that came about. If it's not a risk, why was that mitigation needed?
It's not required as part of this development because, as I say, all the built form will be outside of flood zones 2 and 3, but they were just put in as a precautionary measure. But it is not required because, like I say, it exceeded Part B of the MPPF. The exceedance, the exceptions test, sorry. But it was just a precautionary measure just to put that in, but it's not necessarily required as part of the development.
So could there therefore be a risk of not the flooding itself, but say cracking of the dwellings due to the fact that, you know, there's this extra 150 mil because of the potential flooding?
Sorry, did you say cracking of the dwellings?
Yeah, so the property itself, if there's a need to raise the damp proof by an extra 150 mil, is there a potential for there to be an effect on the houses once they've been built?
No, there shouldn't be.
Okay.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Just to clarify, with the access, obviously it's been moved south. When Essex Highways have been consulted, are they just consulted on the safety aspects of where the access is, or are they consulted on other planning matters to do with? I'll come to that in a moment. Just is it only on the safety issues that they assess junctions?
So prior to the application being submitted, the applicant did engage with Essex County Council in pre-application. And when they are consulted on the application, they're not just looking at the access, they're also looking at the layout, they're looking at the car parking, they're looking at the width of the road, the pavements, and they are looking at other accesses, including pedestrian accesses onto Castledon Road. So it's not just the vehicle access they're looking at, they are looking at everything on there to do with highway safety.
So my question is then, because they've moved it south towards the properties at number 42 and number 44 Castledon Road, rather than having a junction that's opposite, you've now got a junction where people are coming out and their car lights are going to be shining in through their windows. So it's not been assessed against residential amenity, this junction, which, as this is an outline application looking at access and layout, should be a planning consideration to take into account about their residential amenity.
I mean, for an access to be opposite a dwelling is not an unusual situation. I mean, the reason why they moved it south is to avoid any conflict with cars leaving or exiting Elizabeth Drive. So that's their purpose of doing it, as concerns were raised by Essex County Council that there may be a conflict. So that's come around through a pre-application with Essex County Council, the location of the site. So they have looked at that. And like I say, an access opposite a dwelling isn't an unusual situation.
It's not unusual, but when we see these new applications coming time and time again, they're generally not, because obviously the old estates, when they were built, they're built in the late 60s, 70s, and new design guides have come out to sort of enhance residential amenity. So I'm just wondering, in terms of, has this been judged against their potential residential amenity at night time, especially during winter when it's dark at 6 o'clock, people coming out to go either turn left to go towards Downham or right to go back towards Wickford. So I just wondered if there's been any judgment at all on residential amenity on the actual outline junction, because a lot of these new developments we're seeing, the actual access does not, the ones I've seen where things have been passed and there's been questions raised, don't actually come out opposite people's houses.
That would have had to be considered by Essex County Council Highway Authority. I mean, I do take your point there about winter time, during the winter months and sort of late in the evening. But, you know, traffic, especially late in the evening, is not, I suppose it would be a lower period, wouldn't it, with cars travelling, exiting the estate itself. But, yeah, that would have had been considered by Essex County Council.
Any more questions, clarification? No? Nobody? Mike? No? Okay, we'll go straight into people that wish to speak. So, first of all, can I please call Councillor Stuart Allen?
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, I've got 3 minutes to speak here. My main objection, of course, is that this application is in a significant area, significant green belt area. There's still a green belt. You moved a lot of it to grey belt, but there is a significant green belt area in this development. And even this small area of green belt provides homes for wildlife and gives the residents a joyful experience of countryside next door. There's a residential amenity that's being eroded by this development. I mean, residents have seen badgers, deer, bats and owls, which I mentioned with many other wildlife species, in your protected species survey, which was submitted with the application. However, the considerations expressed in that report, in that protected survey, do not give sufficient weight to the need to preserve sites used by wildlife. In fact, the comments seem, in effect, to say, we know the wildlife is there and they need these greenbelt features to succeed, but the development will press on anyway and hope the species will survive and adapt to a housing estate environment. So they've taken away a residential amenity that residents have enjoyed for some time. In the design and access statement, the proposed development site can be clearly seen as an area of open land with trees, hedges and the river couch, providing wildlife space at the edge of a fairly densely populated housing area. And the Castledon Road residents have provided evidence for the wildlife seen in this area: deer, bats, owls, badgers, and sufficient evidence that this is an important site for wildlife in the urban area. The preservation of this site and its wildlife should be given due weight in the planning decision to preserve the trees and the big hedges, which cannot be replaced by new ones in a housing estate environment. Just turning to the flooding risk, which has been comprehensively covered in your presentation, the significance of the flooding risk is being underplayed in the documentation. In section 3.2, the flood risk plan of the design and access statement, the line of flood zone 3A joins up the proposed sud swales, but the line is not shown on the proposed master plans, which you've been showing on the screen there. And by superimposing this line 3A, which is the worst line for flooding, it would appear that some of the properties may be affected by the flood zone and other properties are too close for comfort. The position of the swales are different in the flood risk plan and the master plan layout, and the site is known as a wet area, and without significant ground slope across the site, it's important to ensure that all proposed properties are safely above the flood level. I mean, you just mentioned moving it up 6 inches just in case. So, you know, anybody buying that property saying, oh, our house, our floor level is 6 inches above the possibly the maximum flooding, which personally I wouldn't think would be very. I would just say no. If I was buying that, I'd say, well, no. If I'm only 6 inches above the 3A flood line, I'd rather find somewhere else. And the areas designated flood risk 3A are deemed to have a high probability of flooding, a 1 in 100 or greater. So this line is very important on the map in relation to the proposed houses. In summary, the disruption to wildlife and the flood risk from the river should be given sufficient weight to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stuart Allen. Can I call now Ray Hayden, please? Would you like to come to the front, Ray, and then press the red button? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Good evening. My overall stance on this application is for rejection. With regard to flooding, I know it's been talked about quite a lot, this application has a site on a floodplain and situated in a valley where water discharges into the River Crouch. The flood risk document states that flooding can occur. According to the National Planning Policy Framework, it requires the risk of flooding off-site to be considered strongly. This has not been considered together with the other proposed developments that will also discharge in the river. The developments are being treated as single sites, but the combination will be a disaster downstream. In 1958, Wickford was flooded for 4 months during a storm event. This resulted in a new culvert around the town. Since then, no improved infrastructure has been adopted, although many houses have been built. In 2021, the river came within 300 millimetres of flooding the London Road and did flood the end of the High Street by Runwell roundabout during heavy rain. I've sent pictures to the planning officer showing where the river is flooding along Riverside Walk, which is just along from the site, and up to the culvert in the London Road. Current development proposals in the River Crouch Valley, notable this one, Bell Farm Development, 238 London Road Development and now 176 London Road are being looked at individually, but the total flooding risk is enormous that will incur downstream as all water runoff from the developments end up in the river, i.e. in Wickford Town and the surrounding properties. The flood risk document fails to take into consideration the downstream effects of this development and the others. The document states that floor levels of houses have to be raised by 150mm due to the flood risk. Water butts will be fitted to take some of the water, and that's a bit of a joke. The water table should be 1 metre below ground level, but is at ground level. A sustainable drainage system will be required on roads and driveways to try to stop and slow water draining into the river. Householders will be given a flood maintenance manual to maintain their properties, and the recommendation is that householders sign up to the flood warning system. What does that tell you as a committee? They know it's going to flood. Why should residents of Wickford get flooded, resulting in it being a total flood risk area and inability to insure properties and businesses in our town? These developments are in the wrong locations, and the subsequent flood risk of the River Crouch and the overall town of Wickford. No one can predict when the next storm is coming, but with climate change it's on its way, and developing in this valley will be a disaster. The committee should reject this and other proposals in the valley, and should be mindful that otherwise they will be complicit when the town gets flooded.
Thank you. Ray Hayden. Can I now call Paul Hull, please?
Good to go. The narrative being pushed by the government is very much build, build, build. And while there may be a need for additional housing to be built, this should not be done recklessly, and planning permission should not be granted for any site the developer thinks that they can make a profit on. In general, there seems to be little consideration given to the impact on Wickford and the surrounding areas, to the scale of the development being proposed. And I'm sure the committee is familiar with the letter issued by Mark Francois MP, which details at some length why the area simply cannot cope. Regarding the proposed Castledon Road development in particular, the fact is that the site is simply not suitable for development. The area is high risk of surface water flooding and flooding from the river, yet the proposal is to cover the land that naturally absorbs rainwater with even more housing. A such system, rather than a traditional pipe system, is proposed as the method to address surface water flooding. During the public consultation, the developer themselves admitted that this method is unproven, not without its flaws, and requires significant and costly specialist maintenance throughout its lifetime. Developer's own report clearly states that, quote, "For any surface water drainage system to operate as originally designed, it is necessary to ensure that it is adequately maintained throughout its lifetime. Therefore, over the lifetime of a development, there is the possibility that the performance of the system could reduce or could fail if it is not correctly maintained. This is even more important when SUDS is used for the surface water management system, as these require a more onerous maintenance regime than the typical piped network," unquote. During a time when local authorities are already struggling to maintain traditional pipe networks across the country, and hence the need for the critical drainage area grants being issued, it makes absolutely no sense for a development on land of high risk of surface water flooding to rely on an unproven and onerous system to even be considered. The suggestion that the risk of surface water flooding be mitigated by the use of water butts and permeable driveways would be laughable if it didn't have such potentially devastating consequences. An overflow pipe is proposed as, quote, "backup should the system fail," unquote, from the report, but this simply pushes water directly into the River Crouch, and this would not be at a natural flow rate, and would just cause the river to struggle to contain the water, increasing the flood risk from the river itself. With surface water flooding solutions not being 100% effective, the developers even amended their plans, as we heard, to increase the height of the properties. It's also been recommended that the new residents sign up to Environment Agency's early flood warning system. It's beyond belief that we are even considering building homes on land where the residents will need to sign up to a flood warning system. There's also been no consideration to the impact to the increased flood risk to neighbouring properties. Most of the site is unspoiled greenbelt land. The parts that have been partially developed were done so illegally, and retrospective planning granted only recently and prior to the formal planning application being submitted. After this committee's failure to prevent such a tactic on the London Road development, agreement to this development on the grounds of partially developed greenbelt land sets a very dangerous precedent and encourages other greenbelt landowners to illegally develop land. The site is simply not suitable for development.
Thank you, Paul Hull. Can I call Andrew Voss, please?
So, yeah, I'm his wife. He's stuck on the M25.
Yes, I've just heard that your husband's caught up in traffic. Yes, of course you can.
Okay. Do I need to press anything, or am I good to go? I'm good to go. Okay, fine. The planning proposal includes a long pathway between properties 77 and 81 Castledon Road, leading out onto Castledon Road on the north-east side of the development. Objections to this part of the development were submitted on 14th of October 2024, both through the online planning portal and in greater depth by letter of the same date. I would like to understand how the Planning Committee have assessed the material matters raised regarding public safety, risk of crime and antisocial behaviour, and the impact on the living conditions of existing residents. Firstly, the pathway would exit onto Castledon Road at a particularly hazardous part of the busy highway, which has seen numerous accidents. The envisaged link to the pathway north of the river Crouch would create a highly dangerous crossing point on a sharp double bend where visibility for pedestrians is very poor. Vehicles regularly drive too quickly and frequently lose control. I would like to place on record that with greater footfall, it will be sadly a matter of time before a pedestrian is killed or seriously injured. Even any new traffic calming measures would be inadequate and fail highway standards due to the poor visibility. Secondly, the pathway in question would be an exceptionally long and narrow corridor running a significant 70 metres between the two aforementioned properties. Throughout the length of the pathway, there are high boundaries each side bordering properties 77 and 81, which would be further augmented by the owners for privacy and security purposes. Aside from the adjoining properties, the area is and will remain relatively remote. Accordingly, for anyone using the alleyway, it will take circa 1 minute to walk its length, with the associated risk of personal assault or robbery by anyone seeking to commit crime, and with very little help available nearby. Thirdly, alleyways are well linked to both antisocial behaviour and criminal activity. Across the UK, many are being gated or permanently closed due to the serious issues encountered. Therefore, the installation of a new pathway of such length and remoteness makes little sense. Fourthly, the proposed pathway will require significant lighting at night. This would create significant new light pollution for the locality and properties at 77 and 81 Castledon Road, with such new night lighting spanning across circa 70 metres. In conclusion, I urge you to give your utmost consideration to the various strong objections raised to this pathway. There is a simple and quicker alternative routing for pedestrians via the main proposed access road out to Castledon Road. I would request that the decision makers specifically look into this part of the plan and visit the area to see for themselves the danger that would be created that may not be apparent on a plan. It is no exaggeration that a decision to reject the plan, ill-considered pathway is highly likely to save lives and prevent crime.
Thank you, Mrs. Voss. Can I now call on Neil Thompson, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, councillors. The proposed development under consideration this evening has been informed by detailed pre-application meetings with the council's planning team. This extensive pre-application engagement included meeting a number of stakeholders prior to submitting the application. The preparation of the planning application included an in-person public consultation event in July last year, where the applicants and the project team met with local residents. This was a very well attended event, and the feedback received has informed the proposals this evening. The application site has long been identified as a potential site for housing, having been a draft allocation under the withdrawn local plan. It also forms part of a potential allocation for the emerging local plan. It's been confirmed by the council under a lawful development certificate that large parts of the site comprise previously developed land. As noted within the officer's report and a presentation, the proposal utilises grey belt land and would not fundamentally undermine the purposes of the green belt. The proposal will deliver much needed housing within the borough to meet the council's housing targets. Crucially, the development will provide 49 affordable homes, which equates to 50%. The planning permission will secure extensive infrastructure contributions, which was a key issue for local residents at the public consultation event. This includes a contribution to Wickford Secondary School places, healthcare contribution to London Road Surgery and Swanwood Partnership, an employment and skills plan, improvements to sustainable transport including bus service enhancements along London Road, open space, culture, play and sports provision including funding to improve nearby play areas. The scheme will deliver new areas of publicly accessible open space along the River Crouch, which will connect to existing rights of way and approved developments to the south. This will provide excellent connectivity to Wickford. With regards to highways, the applicant undertook detailed pre-application advice with Essex Highways, who have confirmed that the proposal is acceptable. The site is situated in a sustainable location and will deliver public transport enhancements to Wickford. There have been no objections regarding flood risk from the Environment Agency, the local lead flood authority or Anglian Water. All new dwellings are situated in flood zone 1, ensuring minimal flood risk. The development also incorporates a sustainable urban drainage system designed to manage all surface water runoff, including during the design rainfall event. The discharge rate to the watercourse will be controlled, remaining below the 1 in 1 year greenfield runoff rate for rainfall events to and including the 1 in 100 year event, with an additional 45% allowance for climate change. The 150 millimetres is good practice and has only been recommended as a suggestion, and the recommendation to sign up to a flood alert system has also not required, but again has been forward as part of our flood risk drainage strategy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Neil Thompson. I have a letter from County Councillor Buckley, and I will ask one of the officers to read it out for me, please.
Thank you. I object to the development on Greenbelt, a status still reaffirmed in the reports on the council website, but recognising that under the current local and national government policies, there is a significant risk that Basildon Council will overrule this as a valid reason for refusing consent. The following matters relating to the letter need also be considered. Page 1, para 3 says, given the design of the internal layout, the applicant has informed the Highway Authority that this will remain private. This effectively acknowledges that the design layout would not meet the requirements of the Highway Authority and is thus unsatisfactory and is removed from Highways jurisdiction. There is no reference to the continued controversy over service charges and standards on estates that are not adopted by the relevant authorities. Junction design. I stated in my formal comments to the consultation that the proposed junction design, in effect an offset crossroad, was defective. I've also reiterated this to Mr Lawrence, the highways engineer. Notwithstanding the issue of some excessive speeding in the road, which could be addressed in part with a mini roundabout solution, this stretch of road has been the location of numerous accidents, most of which are not recorded, as there has been few injuries or fatalities. The junction design submitted would mean that traffic leaving the site during the hours of darkness would have headlights pointing directly into the bungalow opposite. It would also point at vehicles exiting Elizabeth Drive, thus increasing accident risk. The egress to the site has 3 mature trees by the junction. It is likely that these are covered by tree preservation orders, as most trees fronting Castledon Road are similarly protected. The revision of the entry to the site may enable 1 or more trees to be retained. In my original objection, I requested that a preservation order be made to protect all mature trees on site. I have not been notified whether this has been done. This would minimise the risk of preemptive tree removal. Bus infrastructure. Whilst improvements to the bus stops at the Downham Arms are welcome, the changes proposed will not make the service any better for residents. Both stops have shelters and marked cages already, although the castle curbs will make access easier for people with physical disabilities. It should be noted that proposals are intended to reduce car use, given that it is unlikely, if not impossible, to route a bus via the development site. The car is a logical means of transport to the town centre and beyond. On current routing destinations, such as Chelmsford and Basildon, require a change in the town centre. It should also be noted that some routes do not stop at the railway station. Not mentioned in the report on sustainable transport matters is the suggestion by the developer in his submission that the station is 0.7 miles on foot. The route to achieve this is on unmade footpaths across fields, which is impassable in wet conditions, has no street lighting and is impractical for pedestrians in business attire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Thank you all the speakers that have come along and that have spoken tonight. Thank you very much. I'd like to now open it up for members to have their views on this, please. Is there any members? Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a few questions for the officer, if that's okay. So, can you just outline, please, what public footpaths or pedestrian access there is to this site as it stands at the moment, prior to development? Thank you.
So the site isn't publicly accessible at the moment. So if I take you to that site plan there, so you can see access into the site from Castledon Road. That goes past sort of the residential dwellings up towards the builders' merchant. So that's the only public access you have, is to that commercial site there. The stables and the equestrian is private and is owned by a house that fronts onto Castledon Road. But so the only public access at the moment is from Castledon Road, but like I say, it goes up to the commercial buildings at the rear. So that is the only public accessible way into the site. The remainder of the site remains not available to the public. Like I say, there is a public footpath that runs along the Riverwalk here. But in terms of actually into the site, it's just from Castledon Road at that point where the cursor is. That is existing, but there is a gate there, which, yeah, it's a field gate basically.
Okay, so the channel at the top in the northeast corner, yeah, there where your cursor is. So at the moment, that's not a public footpath. It's not.
No, that isn't a public footpath, not official public footpath. So
it's
anyway.
It's access to the field, but it's not.
It's access to the field, but as far as I'm aware, it's not a public right of way registered under Essex County Council. So that's on the opposite side of the road. So it's not an official public right of way. Whether pedestrians use it now, I don't know, but it's not an official public footpath.
Okay, thank you. And can you just take us through again the SUDS provision, please, Katie? Thank you.
Yeah, so there are, if I can refer back to my notes, so there are SUDS provision along the River Crouch. So you can see basins here, they'll fill up when there's heavy rainfall, and the water will be retained on site and slowly released back into the River Crouch at 1.1 greenfield rate. So that there are the SUDS features, and you've got one here in this corner as well. There are also, as I said previously, like permeable paving, so the pavings that are proposed will be permeable, so any surface water can seep through. Water butts are proposed. Yes, I've covered everything that I said previously. So yeah, permeable service, water basins and water butts are proposed on site. As I say, this has all been reviewed by the Essex County Council lead local flood authority. They have not raised objections to what's been proposed on site. SUDS is now the common way forward with major developments anyway. So, but like I say, these basins will fill up on a heavy rainfall and release slowly back into the River Crouch at a 1.1 greenfield rate.
Thank you. And finally, I assume at this outline stage, we wouldn't be getting into details such as whether there would be lighting in this passage between the two houses on Castledon Road.
Yeah, sorry, that is correct. As I said in my, I know, sorry, it's a long presentation, I might have lost you at some point, but we have consulted with Essex Police, Design Out Crime. They have commented on the application. They haven't raised any objections to the proposal. They have welcomed discussions with the developer with regards to sort of landscaping, lighting, that kind of thing. And this will be a matter that will be reserved and reviewed should a reserved matters application come forward if planning permission is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, on this committee we often have a debate about what classes as grey belt and what doesn't. But as far as I can see on this application, this is a prime example of grey belt. It's on previously developed land. There's no loss of agricultural land. Significant parts of the site are being retained as meadows to which are in flood zones, and also that will allow the local wildlife to thrive on that side of the river. All the dwellings are in flood zone 1. So yeah, I'm struggling to find much that's that would be against this application. Really, it's providing much needed homes to the borough, and it's, as far as I can see, a perfect example of grey belt land. But yeah, I haven't got much more to add to that.
Thank you, Alex. Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification, just to correct Michael on one thing. The public footpath in the northeast corner has never been public, but in this proposal it will be public. So the questions around how it will be connected to existing public footpaths is correct. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got the open area play and areas for people to walk and meander and walk their dogs, etc. But looking at this map, they're along the River Crouch, and they would be in flood zones 2/3. So those areas wouldn't necessarily be used particularly often when you've got peak rainfall seasons, such as in the sort of, in the autumn and late winter, early springtime. So it seems a bit redundant to have a playground and it get flooded all the time, which is what currently we do have one backing on some farmers' fields in Ramsden, which has been an issue for quite some time, as my ward colleagues have just mentioned behind me. So it seems a bit redundant to be placing, obviously, equipment and areas of public open space for people to enjoy and recreation, to walk, etc. In areas that are prone to flooding. It just seems a bit counterintuitive to what they're trying to achieve for the residential amenity of existing and new residents. In terms of the sort of the biodiversity and the net gain, and I know a lot of the sort of hedgerows are going to be kept, some to be improved, but the issues are, of course, while this building work's being done, the mitigation's being done over the existing wildlife that are there, which we've gone into a report which I've now sat on planning for 2 years and previously substituted quite a lot when I was first elected in 22. I've not seen a report with so much in-depth ecology in it, with so many tables about the species that are there, since I've sat on any application, which is a cause for concern. I mean, we've got tables on here which are saying that there are two nesting bird species on the red list. I haven't got it up in front of me. One of them is starlings. You've got birds of important scientific interest, low decrease in population, such as woodpeckers. Someone sent me a photo the other day of a hawk that landed in a back garden, which I thought was quite nice. So those sorts of things where we're taking away nesting sites for birds which are on the UK's and European red list for enhanced conservation. And we've got areas here where, despite no sets being found, there are 9 sets within I believe it is a 500 metre radius of the centre of the site, but yet evidence of excessive commuting. I do like that word for badgers, that they commute. So commuting and using it for digging and foraging. Taking away these areas, of course, is a difficult situation, because you're going to start building these houses. I mean, not at that stage yet, because we're only at outline, but we've seen problems over the years with badgers who do just like tunnelling, don't they? They do like going through people's fences. There's nothing they won't go through. And at the moment, they've got a nice open bit of ground where, as a protected species, they can forage, they can go and exercise, etc. before going to sets. I assume that's what they do. They're commuting for, as a bit of exercise. So I think it's a bit worrying that we're taking away somewhere that has 9 sets within the 500. I think the last one I saw with some badger sets on, I think it was 2. So we've got that to be getting on with. The report mentions as well about the possibility of great crested newts, which is an interesting document in the report, as it mentions that there are 5 ponds nearby, but only 2 were measurable because of the others. Sorry, 6 ponds nearby, 2 were measurable, but 4 of them were because access was not given. Now, whilst they've recommended mitigations, they've not proven or done, in my view, enough testing to whether or not these animals, which are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, as one of the most protected species in Europe and the UK, I don't think enough mitigation work has been done. We're saying they're going to put in £5,000 for a habitat. Well, where's the plan for the habitat? What are they actually going to build? Because if this is going to come in first before they start building, which they'll have to do, because if they disturb them, if they're on land, that's an offence. So we need to be clear about what they're actually going to be doing, and at this point in time, there's nothing to say exactly what they're doing, where it's going to be located. I know it's in the Wick Country Park, where it's going to be located, what it's going to look like, how that habitat is going to be protected from encroachment from the members of the public. Because if you even look at the mitigations and everything else for the Wildlife and Countryside Act, it is illegal as an offence for someone to transport a newt without a proper mitigating strategy, alive or even dead. So I think more work needs to be done on these points. In terms of bats roosting, yes, there's been some ecology surveys being done over certain months, but there's been evidence of bats flying around, sort of geolocators, people have those flying around. Yes, okay, they saw a bat coming out of one house one day. It's not to say that there's not many more. It just says that there is the existence of bats in the area. They are also a protected species, and whilst all of this is going on and buildings are being knocked down, and whilst the mitigations to say that they're going to put bird boxes and bat roosts onto these properties, which generally is good for conservation in the long run, with the amount of population that's there at the moment, I think the document was mentioning nearly 400 bat sightings in a month. That is you start knocking down all these places where they roost and the trees where they roost, other than I think 2 that they're keeping, suggests to me that the mitigations themselves will harm the population of bats that are currently there. We've also got muntjac deer, we've also got lizards, we've also got slow worms and adders. There's also sort of animals which they did a vole test, didn't find any voles, but it's not to say that they're not in the river, not to say that they don't commute either to the location, only because some ecology guy walked down in the rain one day in April and decided he was there for 3 hours and couldn't see a vole, but there wasn't one there. That's not necessarily the case. So there are lots of issues with this land. I'm not adverse to this land being called grey belt. I do agree I do agree to the extent it is predominantly previously developed land. I just think there's a lot more work to be done with this before we start throwing away land that is used excessively by nature and by wildlife. I mean, in fact, looking at some of this stuff, I would even suggest that we defer to see if we can make this site an SSSI, to be honest with you, with the hedgerows that are there. But I think, just to sort of a passing reminder, whilst I consider the development itself not to be inappropriate because of its location and some sustainable qualities and the grey belt principle. I wouldn't say grey belt, even the green belt principle was previously developed land, because I was here for the 200 London Road one. I did vote for that as well. But the issues, of course, is not whether or not it's considered not inappropriate. It is, however, if it's considered acceptable, and I don't think at this stage it is. So I won't be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Is there any other questions, please? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. No questions, but I just think, given that we've had people speaking here tonight, we've got people in the public gallery, I just wanted to kind of précis my view, how I see this and how I'm going to vote. So I agree that this is grey belt land. I think that's, I agree with the officers on that. I also agree that the planning balance is very significantly in favour of the development. In particular, obviously, nearly 100 new homes, of which 50% will be affordable. 60% of the site will be open to public access, and obviously £1.1 million worth of contribution towards infrastructure. Obviously, I've listened to what's been said by the speakers. I think most of them spoke about flooding. And I agree that I had some concerns when I read the report about flooding, but clearly the housing is in floodplain 1, and we have to take the advice of the flooding authorities on this. We can't really go against that. I've also heard this area called an amenity. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, to be honest with you, given that at the moment there's no public access to it whatsoever. And in the future, as I said, about 60% of it will be open green land. So for those reasons, I will be voting in favour of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Anybody else? No? Right. I'd just like to say I do agree with Councillor Baker, what he said about it being Greenbelt. I listened quite carefully what Councillor Myers had to say about the wildlife and the habitat there, but we've got to remember this is only outline, and we can look for these things afterwards, because with outline we can go back and say these are the things that we need for the wildlife, if there is such wildlife, if there is voles, and we have to have proof of that, obviously. I'd just like to mention to the officer Katie again, I was really worried about a lot of the mature trees on there, but I think the developers are keeping those mature trees. Am I right?
So I said within my presentation that the perimeter trees are remaining. There are trees throughout the development, so hold on if I... Oh, sorry, Emma, can you show... sorry. So as you can see by the aerial photograph there, obviously the trees are going to be retained along the river crouch. The trees along the perimeter will be retained. Most of the trees within the site will be removed to make way for the development. But like I say, the perimeter and the trees along the river crouch will be retained. There are landscaping conditions that have been recommended, and it has been agreed with the developer that if one tree is removed, 3 will be replanted in its place around the development. But landscaping is a matter to consider at a later stage.
Thank you. I think Councillor Buckley did mention that he lives along near there, and he did mention the actual mature trees. So, you know, I'm pleased about that. And I was a bit worried about the floodplains and different other things, but listening to Ray Hayden, he did say that there would be a flood drain 1, which obviously would take a lot of this away. And we don't know for certain, but if the developers are actually saying that, we've got to take notice of that. With the 106 agreements, with the houses there and with the social houses, I'm inclined to vote for this evening. Thank you. I'd like to go into the recommendation now, which is that planning application number 2401-1098 out be granted conditional planning permission subject to no calling powers being exercised by the Secretary of State, the completion of the 106 agreement, to secure 50% affordable housing on site, together with financial contributions towards healthcare improvements. I think we've got a bit more as well, haven't we? Education, yeah, local delivery, pilot schemes, sustainable transport, bus services, contributions, bus stop improvements, travel plan, employment and skills maintenance, and monitoring of the approved biodiversity game plan for a period of 30 years. RAMs, open spaces, monitor fees, payment of the local planning authority, professional and legal fees associated with the completion of the 106 agreement as set out in section 5.8 and subject to the conditions set out at the end of the report, with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice. Can I see all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any abstentions? All those against? Thank you. I think it's carried. Thank you very much. Pardon? Yeah, do you think we should? Yeah. I think we're going to have a five-minute comfort break for everybody. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We will go on to item 5. Sorry. Sorry. I do apologise. Sorry, Alex. Going on to item 4, which is the installation of a battery energy storage system with associated infrastructure, land north of Southend, Arterial Road, Rayleigh. I think that's for you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Emma, are you able to put the thingy? Thank you. Thank you very much. As Chair just said, that this site relates to land north of Southend Arterial Road, Rayleigh. It's for the installation of a battery energy storage system with associated infrastructure. So in front of you is the location plan for the site. As I said, the proposal is for an installation of a battery energy storage system and associated vehicle access track towards Doublegate Lane in the western direction underneath the A130. The facility would be connected via an underground cable route to the point of connection at Rayleigh substation to the north. So that's the substation on the A130 as you travel towards the borough. This aerial view here shows the application site outlined in red. The application site comprises agricultural land totaling to approximately 2.55 hectares and is located on land north of Southend Arterial Road, which is known as the A127. The site is bound by Anwood Lodge Business Park to the east. So that's that small, if you can see in front of you, the aerial view there, the small business park there, and Arterial Park to the east. So that's the development currently under construction at the moment. I think they're building out phase 2 of that site, and that's to the east as well. The A127 is to the south, and the A130 is to the west. The railway line, which, if you see my cursor here, runs adjacent to the site as well. So that's a railway line where the trains travel to London Liverpool Street or to Southern Victoria Railway. So that's an embankment there, and that's located to the north. Further beyond the railway line is Rayleigh National Grid substation, and as I said, that's located beyond the railway embankment, and there are pylons and overhead power lines that crosses through the site, which I will show you in a site photo that I've got actually. The site is situated in the grey belt. The site is shown as on the Environment Agency mapping tool and Magic Maps as being grade 3 under the agricultural land classification. Slide 3, so these are site photos taken from the A127, so you can see sort of a field gate here, so there is an existing access onto the A127, and there are pylons and overhead lines that cross the site. If you can see here beyond the shrubbery, this is Arterial Park, which they are still sort of building out at the moment, as I said, and that's to the east of the site, and that actually falls in Rochford District Council, so this site is on the edge of the borough. The compound comprises 2 control rooms. So here you've got sort of the control rooms and switch rooms that are facilitated with the battery storage. There are 23, so the buildings there in brown, if you can see them, are 23 inverter and transformers, and those grey long oblong on the plan in front of you are the battery storage units, and there's 46 of those. If you travel along the A130, there is actually a battery storage unit to the north of the power, the substation there, which is in Rochford District Council again, but that's kind of the idea of what they look like in real life, if you're unsure. The facility would be secured by a 3-metre pole-mounted CCTV cameras and enclosed by a 2.4 metre high metal wielded mesh security fence. 8 water towers also proposed here as well, outside the compound. The proposed development would operate for a temporary period of 40 years. As said previously, the total site extends to approximately 2.55 hectares, with the battery storage occupying approximately 0.7 hectares of this area. The rest of the site is dedicated to biodiversity improvements, landscaping, planting and access. The battery storage is not an energy production per se, however the proposal would contribute towards the balancing of the local energy network, electricity network, providing a flexible supply that complements fluctuations in energy supply, and in doing so would increase security of supply to the surrounding area. The provision of the battery energy storage is a critical national priority as set out in the National Policy Statement, EN1. Here are just some, so the following slides will just show you elevations of the battery storages, the transformers and switch rooms. So these are the battery elevations. So say that, you know, they are what they, as you expect, if you've seen the battery storage on the O130, this is, you know, it would have that same appearance. This is the proposed gate fence and CCTV. As I said previously, it's going to be a mesh wooded fence at 2.4 metres high, with CCTV as well, slightly higher than the fence proposed. This is the control room elevation. So again, you know, they're just sort of box-like structures. Proposed inverters as well. Switch rooms that are associated with the facility, and transformers as well. The key issues here is that we've looked at green belt, we have looked at the grey belt, and we have deemed that the site forms a very small area of a parcel, OA7 in the green belt study 2023. So whilst on a strategic scale, the overall parcel performs in the green belt on a localised level. The proposal is small scale and does not conflict with purposes A, B, and D of the green belt purposes in paragraph 143 of the NPPS. NESO is a publicly owned energy body responsible for energy planning in Great Britain. When the National Policy EN1 was published in November 2023, it's noted that there were around 4 gigawatts of operational electricity storage in Great Britain, of which some 1 gigawatt is battery storage. NESO recently published Clean Power 2030 advice on achieving clean power by 2030. The Clean Power Pathways sees a 4 to 5-fold increase in demand in flexibility with, amongst other things, an increase in grid-connected battery storage from 5 gigawatts to a 22 gigawatts. So NESO predicts that the unprecedented volumes of clean energy infrastructure projects are needed to meet the government's energy ambitions. Whilst the NESO report is not government policy or has the same status as the NPPF, it does provide supporting context for decision making. Paragraph 161 of the NPPF indicates that the planning system should support the transition to a low carbon future and support, amongst other things, renewable and low carbon energy and associated infrastructure. Given the context provided by the National Policy EN1 and the NESO research, officers consider that a battery storage facility project represents much needed associated infrastructure. We've also considered the development against the impact on the openness of the green belt, albeit it is limited, so it'd have a limited impact on the openness of the green belt, but due to its small scale nature. The proposal is considered to meet paragraph 155 of the NPPF as the site is considered to be grey belt land and meeting the requirements of the NPPF paragraph 155. Therefore not constituting inappropriate development. Nonetheless, if members reach a different conclusion and deem the development inappropriate, the suggested very special circumstances have been thoroughly considered in section 5.5 in the report. These relate to increased renewable energy generation, climate emergency, energy security, good design, biodiversity net gain. I think it's important here to consider the location of the development and its suitability. So the site was primarily chosen for its location near Rayleigh substation. Likewise, the battery storage facility must be situated close to an identified grid connection. The applicant has secured a connection to Rayleigh substation for 2027, and with UK Power Networks has identified a viable connection point that considers the wider grid constraints. The site does comprise Grade 3 agricultural land, but it's not significantly large and is actively farmed. Paragraph 88B of the NPPF supports the diversification of agricultural land-based rural businesses. Although the application site is regularly harvested, this field is not critical to the overall agricultural production of the wider agricultural holding west of the A130 due to its segregation from the farm and the field's relatively small size. Therefore, the proposed development would not significantly impact the agricultural operation or the viability of the farm. After a 40-year period, the site would have regained an agricultural use in accordance with the restoration scheme secured by a planning condition. It is therefore not considered that the proposal would not significantly harm agricultural interest. The site would be harvested pending an operational start. With regards to loss of agricultural land, the total farmed area in the east of England is 3.97 million hectares. So the battery storage site represents sort of a very small, sort of 0.00018% of the agricultural land in the east of England. It's not considered a significant loss of agricultural land and therefore would not be detrimental impact to local or national food security. There has been recent appeal decisions. One in particular is in Walsall. The site was also in the Greenbelt and saw a temporary loss of 3.19 hectares of grade 3 land for battery storage development. This was not found to be significant by the Planning Inspectorate. We also must remember that Natural England have no objections to this proposed development, and this is a temporary development which after 40 years will be returned to agricultural use. In another recent appeal, which is in Newark and Sherwood, where the inspector found that 2.4 hectares of grade 3A land would not represent a significant loss in stock of agricultural land, best and the most versatile land or productive agricultural capacity, and does not constitute a sound reason for dismissing the appeal. So that's what the inspector deemed in that particular plan decision. The impact on the character and appearance of the area and including landscaping was considered. The site is lower than the elevated highway and railway embankment, which are densely planted with trees. Despite nearby transport and industrial infrastructure, natural topography and vegetation ensure that the proposed development would not be overly prominent or significant, which would significantly diminish the rural character. The tallest structures will be 4.5 metres high, with all buildings on a 600mm concrete plinths. The development includes industrial elements like shipping containers, transformers and CCTV poles, altering the site's character. However, the site is recessed and surrounded by dense vegetation, limiting its visibility. And also, don't forget, it's adjacent to the industrial park as well to the east. From elevated views, the industrial appearance will impact the character, but this will be localised. Proposed planting will further limit views, and as landscaping matures, the overall effect will be minor. Additionally, a new native hedgerow maintained at a height of 3 metres along the north, west and south boundaries adjacent to the proposed development would provide extra visual enclosure and create an ecology link to the existing field boundary planting to the east. It is not considered that the proposal would harm the nearest residential properties, which is 400 metres south-east of the site. So that's Anwood Lodge. The proposed development seeks to create an internal vehicle access to the site via Doublegate Farm to the west, passing underneath the A130 for both construction and operational traffic. Initially, it was proposed to use the existing access onto the A127, but Essex County Council Highway Authority objected, as a slowing and turning vehicles at this access point would disrupt traffic flows and compromise highway safety. A condition has been recommended to ensure that this access, as it's existing, will not be used during construction and operational development. So the access will be taken to the west of the site underneath the A130. The proposal also meets the increase of the MPPF requirements for an increase of 10% of B&G on site. It does actually exceed this. Therefore, the application has been recommended for approval subject to conditions set out on page 191 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Katie. I'll open it up now for clarification. Is there any members? Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Can we go back to the site plan, please? I just had a quick clarification of what I was looking at. Is it that one? No, the next one, I think. Or was it the one after? Sorry. Yeah, this one. So this one on the left, overall layout and access, and it's got sort of the area where it's got on the right-hand side with the road. But that road goes to the A127, and highways have. If I'm looking at it from this. Oh, this one here. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is an existing track, as I said, on the A127. This will not be laid out as part of development. There is an existing track. Yeah. So as I said, there is an existing access of the A127. A condition has been recommended by the Highway Authority to restrict the use of that site restrict the use of that access going on to the A17, so that should not be used throughout the construction operation of this development. So that road there will not actually be laid out. There was a revised location plan provided, which if I go back to that, which shows no, not that one. Access will actually be taken from this direction in the west from Doublegate Lane underneath the A130, and there has been a condition recommended by the Highway Authority to provide materials of that access track that would go out. But as I say, there will be there is a condition recommended to restrict the use of this access onto the A127.
Thanks. No, it looked a bit confusing because I couldn't see where the road was actually going to lead to the thing from the farm. That was all. Like on the other plan.
Yeah, so I mean, here you've got the aerial view, and as I say, that road will go underneath the A130 out towards Doublegate Lane, which then goes up over the railway track, which then goes out to where Shotgate is. Yeah.
Okay, and the last one is the underground cabling to connect it up to the Raleigh substation. Obviously, would have to go. I looked at underneath the railway line.
Yeah, that is correct. National Rail have been consulted. They have commented on the application. They've not raised any objections, subject to some conditions that they'll speak to the developer. But yeah, it will have to go underneath the railway.
Any more clarifications? No? No? Nope. Okay, then we'll go straight into the vote. Oh no, we have an agent. I do apologise. Richard Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, councillors. I'm Richard. I'm one of the planners at Enso Energy. Our sole focus at Enso is to increase the amount and use of renewable and low-carbon energy in the UK, to provide energy security and to tackle climate change. As the UK moves away from burning fossil fuels to generate electricity, it is obvious that we need to produce more homegrown renewable energy and increase the amount of energy storage capacity to ensure a smooth transition to a zero-carbon grid. We know that the government strongly supports the principle of developing renewable and low-carbon energy from all technologies and at all scales. We also know that renewable energy generation can be irregular, the old adage being that the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. But we can manage this intermittency in supply with energy storage, and there is considerable urgency for energy storage systems to come forward and both underpin energy security and enable the transition to a low-carbon economy. So, significant weight should be attached to the need to meet the UK's international commitments and the government's statutory target to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2050. These are significant material considerations. And the report prepared by your officers is clear. This is a grey belt site where the proposed development does not constitute inappropriate development. There is no conflict with the saved policies of the local plan when taken as a whole. And national green belt policies do not provide a clear reason for refusing the development if councillors do consider green belt policies should apply. This project will help the UK create a power supply that is immune to the whims of the price-fixing oil cartel OPEC and the other petro-states. Battery storage is the mortar in the net zero wall. The solar, wind, hydro and nuclear bricks that form that wall will topple without this mortar holding it all together. It is essential that projects like this are consented now to increase the rate at which carbon emissions can be cut. The government is clear that economic growth is a priority for this country, and the drive to net zero is developing that growth in sectors that will play an ever more important role in the national and global economy in the years to come. Against this background, I sincerely request you uphold your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Moore. Right, we'll go into now. Does anybody, since Richard's spoken eloquently to us all about it, does anybody like any more questions? No? Right. We go into the recommendation then. We recommend that planning application number 240142 be granted planning permission subject to the conditions at the end of the report, with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. go on to item 5, which is the full change of use of land to increase the size of an existing traveller pitch and the erection of an ancillary day room building with heat pump, park retrospective at the Chalet, Nethermain, Basildon. I think this is you, Gordon.
It is, yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, so this relates to an application site on the west side of Nethermain in Basildon, south of the junction with Dry Street. And it's for, as you mentioned, the change of use of land to increase the size of an existing traveller pitch and the erection of an ancillary day room comprising a heat pump. The application is part retrospective. This is a site location plan. The site measures around 50 metres long by around 20 metres wide. You can see it just there next to Nethermain. There's an aerial view. The photo on the left, I think, was taken around 2020 before the current day room was erected and the mobile home was placed on the site. It is an established site. There is a restriction, a condition restricting the use of the site to a Gypsy traveller family imposed since 2003. Before that, there was a personal condition that dated back to about 1983. The photo on the right shows the extent of the additional land that's been incorporated into the site, which measures around about 20 metres by 20 metres. This is extended into some former incidental amenity land that was formerly owned by Homes England. The applicant subsequently purchased that piece of land, and the council is in the process of purchasing the remainder of that incidental land, to which would bring it within our control. These are some site photos. Apologies, they're a bit dark. There is another photograph within the committee report on page page 211, which shows it a little bit clearer as it was in 2020. That was taken in January, so the sun was a bit low, but you can see the existing traveller pitch bit on the left with the day room, if you can just make it out, and then on the right it just shows the additional land that's been incorporated. And then a couple more photos, again just up to the junction with Dry Street. You can see the traffic lights there and a view through the trees. This is the proposed site layout. There is an existing approved day room on the site at the bottom right there. Proposal is part retrospective, as I've said, because the land has already been incorporated into the plot. There are 2 existing mobile homes, and they intend to supplement that. We've got a 3rd mobile home and an additional day room to serve the sleeping arrangements of the mobile homes. This is a proposed floor layout comprising utility room, bathroom, kitchen, day room, living room, sleeping quarters, as I mentioned, are provided in the mobile homes. Proposed elevation, so the building measures around 4 metres high. (14.4 metres wide by 5.35 metres deep, and will comprise a dual pitched roof, tiled roof finished in brick. Key issues. The site is within the Greenbelt, so the key issues are whether the proposed development would be inappropriate in the Greenbelt and its impact on openness, whether any harm by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm is outweighed by various special circumstances, including the need for traveller accommodation, the impact on the character and appearance of the area, highways and parking considerations, impact on the amenities of any nearby neighbouring properties, ecology and flood risk considerations. So in terms of consultations, we received no objections from the Highway Authority. The existing access would be utilised. There would be 7 parking spaces provided and turning within the site. The Council's Arboricultural Officer has been consulted, acknowledges some intermediate age trees have been felled from within the incidental amenity land. These weren't protected in themselves, and he has raised no objection. A condition is sought that landscaping and ecology enhancements be provided within the site to compensate for some of those trees that were lost. The Environmental Health Service asked for details of the noise specification for the heat pump. That has now been provided, but we're waiting for them to review that, so it's still put on as a suggested condition. There are no immediate neighbours to be adversely affected by noise from the heat pump. The nearest residential properties are some 50 metres to the north. The Council's corporate property team advised, as I've mentioned, that the Council is in the process of purchasing the land, or the remaining land, at the corner of Dry Street and Nethermain from Homes England, excluding the land that Homes England have sold to the applicant. As they advise that the Council do not currently own the land, they have no further comment to make. One objection has been received from Councillor Smith, who has called the application to the committee for consideration on the grounds that it's out of keeping with the area and that the location is in the Greenbelt. One third-party objection has also been received, who raises concerns over the lawfulness of the development, the past clearing of the land and the impact of the development on the Greenbelt. So reviewing the Greenbelt, under paragraph 155, this would fall within the terms of grey belt. We reviewed the Greenbelt studies 2017 and 2023, which identified that the site, as a parcel as a whole, doesn't contribute strongly to the purposes A, B and D of paragraph 143 of the NPPF. On that basis, notwithstanding that it has involved development on the Greenbelt, as grey belt, it would not be regarded as inappropriate development, and as such would not be considered harmful in that respect. Should members consider that it doesn't fall within it doesn't fall within grey belt, consideration would then need to be considered with regard to very special circumstances. As I've mentioned, it is for a traveller family. The Council's traveller, 5-year traveller accommodation needs are currently only at 2.77. This is for an extension of an existing pitch serving an existing family. In addition, the area of land that has been incorporated into the site, if I just go back to the aerial photograph, as you can see, is on the north side, which is on the sort of the less open part of the green belt in this location, going towards the settlement boundary rather than towards the western and southern areas where it could be considered more open. But in terms of the design, the proposed day room building is considered acceptable, will not appear over-dominant or out of character in the street scene alongside the existing building of comparable size and scale contained within the existing compound. The provision of a third mobile home within the site of comparable size and alongside the 2 existing mobile homes would similarly not appear over-dominant or out of character. It has extended the brick wall, as you can see, along the frontage, but alongside the existing brick wall, it's not considered too over-dominant. And as I've mentioned, the land before was not subject to any protected designations and is in the process, or the remaining land is in the process of being acquired by the council, which will help ensure a robust tree belt boundary can be retained to the corner with Dry Street. The site is also in flood zone 1 at least risk of flooding. So if we go down to the planning balance, in terms of the positives, as grey belt, it would not be regarded as an inappropriate development, which is afforded significant weight. As green belt, there is limited harm to the openness in this instance because it's on the north side towards the settlement boundaries I've mentioned. Very special circumstances can be considered demonstrated in this instance, i.e. the travel accommodation need, which is a significant positive. The development is well contained within with a robust tree belt buffer capable of being maintained under council ownership to the north side of the site at the junction with Dry Street. There is limited harm to the character of the area, no harm to residential amenity or highway safety, and there is proposed ecology and landscape enhancements. Negative sides are there has been some loss of incidental amenity land and low to intermediate trees, which is a moderate negative. And as a result, there's probably some likely loss of some ecology in the past. This has been an incremental change since 2020, so for sort of the past 5 years, it's gradually extended up to its current extent, but we feel that on balance the positives outweigh the negative aspects in this instance, and accordingly the application is therefore recommended for approval to members subject to the conditions set out on pages 214 to 215 of the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Gordon. Have we any clarifications on this? Anybody wish? Mike?
Yeah, just a quick one from me, Gordon. Sorry, how is it that limited harm to the openness of the greenbelt and the character of the area is a positive? That seems contradictory to me.
But apologies, it's probably more of a neutral. Sorry, thank you.
Any more questions? Chris?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gordon. You said there that the council are trying to ascertain some land. Would it be possible just to highlight that for us on the map? What the council is actually trying to think?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. I'll just go back to the. So if I show you on this aerial view, basically, I think the council is seeking to acquire. So actually, if you go to the bottom right, you can see the area of the land that's been incorporated into the traveller site, and all that land to the. I appreciate the orientation is not quite right, but to the north, going towards Dry Street, and to the west of that is a pocket that's owned by Homes England, as well as land on the north side of Dry Street. The council is seeking to purchase that as well. But like I say, it was owned by Homes England prior.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Do I have 3 or 5 minutes as a local councillor?
minutes.
Thank you. I shall start off. I want to draw members' attention to page 213 under the item flood risks and.
Sorry, Kerry. Sorry. Point of order, Chair. Other councillors have been speaking and been told they only get 3 minutes. So I want clarification on that, please. Thank you.
All councillors have been given 5 minutes.
Right, but in the procedure document it says that all public participants must be given 3 minutes. And that's what we've been sticking to since this has started. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And just for Councillor Myers' benefit, when these changes were agreed recently at full council, it was stated by several speakers that it would be 5 minutes for members of the council. So I refer to that. Right, so I refer to the item on page 213 with regards to the flood risk and drainage. Everybody knows locally the biggest joke is the name Dry Street. You can go up there tomorrow and Dry Street will have water surface coming on the road. And the reason being, where we're talking about is the lower end of Dry Street. The other end of Dry Street is one of the highest points in Essex. In metric, it's over 350 metres high. It's that tall, that mast on top looks straight onto the square mile of London, and the other mast, and the other side looks into the coast of Belgium, and then another mast relays that to Frankfurt. So what I'm saying is you've got this point so high up the other end of Dry Street, it causes flooding. Now, 3 summers ago, residents in Lee Chapel South, because Dry Street has been built on for the Wesley Green and the Clark Street development, streets along Sporehams, and the floodwater got as far as Ingaway. One resident in Sporeham showed me, you know these concrete gravel boards you have at the bottom of a fence? They had a double one because they've got high up gardens, and it was like a scaled down version of Dam Busters. There was so much flood water because we had that flash flood this July day
the water's come from that dry street area where you got the highest point, coming down, and it just smashed 2 concrete gravel boards and just went streaming down Sporums, and it flooded some of our council homes in Ingleway. That's why it is a flood risk. And any way we take away options for that agricultural land around there from absorbing that rainwater is risking our hospital. And I have seen the flood defences recently put in at Basildon Hospital, and someone is seriously needing to get fired. It was just some metal things like chicken wire with some gravel stones on, where you got the Costa Coffee Marks and Spencer thing. So approving this is leaving our hospital and residents in Wesley Green, Lee Chapel South, Kingswood vulnerable to flooding. And yes, Kingswood was flooded in the 1950s. It got as far as Waldegrave, when the original residents told me, several inches up to her kitchen. So approving this will flood. Across the road from it, and there's no mention in this report of the air ambulance. Now, if I was sitting on a planning committee with an open mind, I'd be thinking to myself, is this fine? Is this okay? And I would hope officers will have an answer to that concern. My next point of concern why you should refuse it is that there's always been a traveller pitch there. An elderly gentleman lived there until tragically passed away, and new owners have it and have slightly expanded it, and we've come to this. So we've always had a traveller provision there, but from what I see in this report to the calculations made by officers to our need for future traveller provision, where is the calculation? Because all we're seeing, if members approve it tonight, is that we're approving expansion of the site, a day room, and maybe another caravan can be put there. Where is that calculation in this report to our future traveller need to comply with the local plan process as dictated to us by the government? That would be helpful to know, because if someone said, yes, if this was to pass, is this 1 or 2 traveller pitches towards our total that we have to meet? I don't know. I've read the report. I've got a report here. There's no reference to that. And my main reason why I object to it is that whole area is so precious. This is why when Dry Street got sought outlining planning application in the summer of 2013, this council had to hire a sizable hotel area, and there was over 1,000 people there. I did feel sorry for the members of that planning committee, because it is a natural pocket. If you was to come off onto the Nevermain, where it meets the 5 Bells, there's been signs put up this time last year, conservation area, conservation area, conservation area, almost on top of this. We also have the verges cut every other year in strips to promote invertebra. It's next to a triple SI site. Why is this not considered greenbelt? I do not know. But if this is approved, does the triple SI site get considered? Do other things get considered? I think this committee should either reject, defer, and the members have a site visit and look for themselves. It's not just a bit of green field, it's got a wonderful view of that area, and I'll shut up, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Have we got any questions at all? Anybody got any questions? No? Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't got a question, but I've got 1 or 2 things to say on this one. Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to see Councillor Smith's point, if I'm being completely honest, as to how a small day room and an additional mobile home would have a major impact on the flooding of the hospital and Kingswood beyond it. It seems a bit far-fetched if I'm being brutally honest. But yeah, I mean, this property is building on an existing site that's already being used. There are no immediate neighbouring properties to be impacted by this development, as the officer rightly said, and the report states the 5-year housing land supply for gypsy and traveller pitches is at 2.7 years, which is, you know, better than what it is for other residential sites, but still, you know, almost half of where it should be. So So yeah, I'm struggling to fully understand the arguments against this one. It's building on what's already there, and it isn't impacting neighbours in any significant way. I can't see. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody else? No? Right, we'll go straight into the recommendation. That planning application number 240132/4 be granted conditional planning permission subject to the planning conditions set out in the end of the report. All those in favour, please show. That's granted. Any abstentions? 2. Nobody against. Planning application is approved. Straight into item 6 now, which is variation of condition 2 approved plans of planning permission reference 2301-498 to amend and add drawing reflections changes in roof style, including reductions in height, changes to external windows and doors, and replacement of garden storage buildings at FaceMed, Cosmetic Medical and Dental Centre, Craighill, Billericay, Essex. I think that's you, Miranda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is before members of the Planning Committee due to a previous application for a proposed single-storey infill extension being approved by members. This current application is seeking to vary condition 2 of that approval by way of making changes to the approved plans. These changes are listed at 1.2 and 2.2.1 of the officer report. We move to the slides and the site location plan. The application site, which is outlined in red, comprises of an existing medical centre, parking and a rear garden area. The rear area has existing outbuildings at the end, which are to be replaced with one new outbuilding within this current planning application. In terms of the aerial view, to the north is Craighill Post Office and pedestrian crossing. To the east is Springfields, an existing neighbouring residential dwelling, and to the southwest are existing residential dwellings which are located at Oak Avenue. In terms of the photo, the first photo shows the existing rear elevation of the existing building as FaceMed and also part of the neighbouring property at Springfields. The second photograph shows the existing outbuilding where the approved extension will join. This photo shows the outbuilding to be replaced. The proposed site plan, this slide shows the position of the approved infill extension which will connect the existing building to an existing outbuilding. You can also see the proposed outbuilding which will replace an existing outbuilding towards the rear of the garden area of the site. These show the approved floor plans of the previous planning application and also the proposed floor plan of the current application. So the changes also include a door from the plant room in this location. You've also got 2 new windows which serves a dirty instrument room and also a proposed kitchen. In terms of the outbuilding accommodation, these proposed storage areas and also the disabled toilet is relocated to this area, which will also have a new window. There's a new fire exit door and the entrance at the front has also been repositioned, and also roof lights are also proposed to be repositioned. Going to the next slide. So again, at the top you've got the approved west elevation, and then at the bottom is the proposed west elevation. So at the bottom, you have a new fire exit door, and the entrance door has changed since the previous approval. And also that this is the disabled toilet window to the outbuilding. The roof of the infill extension will also have a height of approximately 3 metres, which has been reduced from 3.1 metres. The proposed external material to be used for the walls of the approved infill extension is now proposed to be cladding and not brick. Moving to this elevation, this is the rear elevation. Again, the top is the approved rear elevation and the bottom is the current proposed changes. So changes include the windows to the existing outbuilding changed to full-length windows, removal of roof lights, and you can see the air conditioning unit to the side, and also the door to the plant room in this location. Moving to the next slide, again at the top you have the previously approved, and then at the bottom you have the current proposed changes. So this shows the side facing towards Springfields, the existing residential neighbouring property, where you have the proposed windows, one of which will be high level, and one window is proposed to serve the proposed kitchen area. And the next slide shows a proposed replacement outbuilding, which would be located at the end of the rear of the site. The key considerations for this application relate to the principle of the development, the design, its impact upon neighbouring occupiers, car parking and highway safety. In terms of the principle of the development, the extension has already been established under the previous planning application. The variations to the plans are required to comply with building regulations, which have had knock-on effects to the proposed layout. A replacement storage building is proposed at the rear of the site, which will replace the existing buildings. In terms of design and layout, the proposed variations are not considered to adversely affect the visual appearance of the proposed infill extension or the outbuilding. The proposed windows are similar to those already approved, and the change of materials of the infill extension from bricks to cladding will not adversely affect the visual impact of the development. The reduction of the roof height also helps from the approved 3.1 metres to approximately 3 metres in height. The proposed outbuilding will replace existing structures to the end of the application site, and which will be of a similar scale to those existing, and is considered to retain the openness of the application site. In terms of impacts on adjoining occupiers, objection comments have been received, which are outlined at page 223 of the report. The proposed changes do not alter the footprint or reposition the infill extension closer to neighbouring dwellings. One of the windows facing towards the neighbouring dwelling at Springfields will be set at high level and obscurely glazed. The other will face onto screening along this boundary with Springfields, and this window will serve a proposed kitchen. Given that the proposed kitchen window is at ground level and will face onto existing fence and vegetation, it is not considered by officers to result in a loss of privacy. The proposed infill extension is also set away from the shared side boundary with the adjacent dwelling. The proposed door to the existing plant room will be set away from this property, and with regards to the existing air conditioning unit being repositioned, Basden Council's Environmental Health and Community had no objection in terms of noise and disturbance issues. With regards to the residential properties at Oak Avenue, the repositioning of the entrance doors to the infill extension will be screened by existing fencing and vegetation. The remaining window to the outbuilding will be obscurely glazed, as it will serve a disabled toilet area. The replacement outbuilding will be set approximately 19.5 metres from the neighbouring property at Oak Avenue, and it's considered that it will not result in overbearing or loss of light issues. After fully considering the objections received and that your environmental health officer did not object to the proposed development, it is not considered that the changes proposed will adversely affect neighbouring properties' residential amenities. In terms of car parking and highway safety, there are no highway implications resulting from the proposed changes. Overall, it is considered that the proposed variations to the previously approved scheme will retain acceptable separation distances from adjacent properties and prevent adverse impacts to their residential amenities. The changes also are not considered to affect the character of the locality, and the application is therefore recommended to members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Miranda. Have we got any clarifications, anybody? Any questions? Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I've been sat on this committee for a few years now. I feel like I know this site better than I know my own home. But yeah, here we are again. So can I just confirm that there are no changes in size and scale at all to what's currently there? It's just from the outside it would be the changes to the window and doorways, and then from the inside it's the layout change. But there would be no. This won't be any larger or smaller than what's already been approved.
No, through you, Chair. It's just the height is slightly reducing from 3.1 to 3, but the exact footprint, everything about the sort of scale will remain exactly how members approved it. It's just really fenestration details and the layout side of things and materials, and then the new outbuilding at the end. Okay,
thank you. And then the other part that stood out in the report is the line that says the addition of an emergency exit from the rear of the existing main building to comply with building regulation fire safety requirements. Is that not already in there? It sounds like that should be something that was in the previous approved application, and that it's sort of weak. I can't understand why there wouldn't already be an emergency exit there, because surely then the current building isn't complying with that at all.
I think through you, Chair, I think they did have an emergency fire exit, but since I don't know if there's new regulations, this is what the agent's confirmed within his planning statement. That's why the changes were required, because the new fire exit door had to be altered to where it was to where it is proposed. That's my understanding of why those changes are needed. It was just really from him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any more? Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I've not seen this application before, obviously. The only question I had on it is this application getting closer to what was refused on the 9th of the 2nd, 2024? So there was a refusal for a single-storey rear extension. Does this just put it closer back to the one that was refused in the first place?
Through you, Chair, no. It's exactly the exact scale and the design of the flat roofs is exactly the same as what members previously approved last year. So it's not getting anything like that. And if it were to be, then obviously officers would have more of a concern than what they are presenting you today with.
Anybody else? No? I'd just like to say the only thing that I was concerned about was an extension to the car park, and that is not happening, is it? No. Thank you. We go straight into the people that wish to speak tonight. So could I ask John Edgecombe to come along?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, councillors. I do take issue with the planning officer, particularly on the windows on the side of the building, but that's it. I've prepared this statement, so I'll read it through if I may. My property, Stringfields, is situated next to the proposal site and immediately to the east. I've been resident there for the past 47 years. The windows now proposed to be inserted in the east elevation of the extension building within a few metres of our perimeter fence would overlook my property and permit sight directly into our back bedrooms, dining room and patio area, and would therefore create a totally unacceptable invasion of our privacy. The application to build a replacement storage building is yet another instance of what I call the creeping development tactics that have been adopted by the applicant throughout the planning process for this plot. If permission is granted for this new construction, I'm convinced that a further application will follow to develop the remainder of the site. I remain very firmly of the opinion that this whole development is totally unsuitable for this small site in the midst of our residential village, and I would ask the planning officer and council to refuse the current applications so as to limit any further development of the site and therefore afford some measure of protection to the interests of the local residents. By way of demonstrating this creeping development tactic adopted by the applicant, the process has been as follows. Firstly, an application for change of use of the existing garage and outbuildings for commercial storage was submitted and approved. Little or no storage use was apparent thereafter. It seemed to me that the area was mainly used for overflow staff car parking. Application to knock down and develop the site under 23000353 was submitted and rightly rejected by the Planning Committee, citing overdevelopment of this small site. Application 2301498 was then submitted and is of a similar overall scale to the previous one, but in my view was regrettably approved by the Planning Committee. From discussions at that meeting, the decision seemed to be made on the basis that the NHS needs all the help it can get. This in spite of the fact that the planning officer was unable to say how much NHS work is undertaken by this private cosmetic and dental clinic. We now have the latest episode in the creeping development story, including converting a garden shed into a permanent building at the extreme end of the plot. If approved, pretty surely the next episode will be the application to link the building to 2301498, which will leave the residents in this corner of Craig's Hill living in the shadow of this commercial exploitation in a village residential setting. Also, why were the windows not included in the original plans? I suggest the applicant did not want to muddy the waters with any issues that might be controversial and that their creeping tactic would serve them better. This continued expansion and costs thereof must have to be supported by increased customer numbers, and there is no space on the site to accommodate increased customer vehicle parking, and any overspill onto the A129 main road would create extreme danger for residents and through traffic. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Edgecombe.
Do I need to press that button again?
Thank you. Can I ask Andy Wells, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Try and keep this brief for you. FaceMed provides healthcare facilities and services to patients within the locality and wider Essex area in accordance with the Care Quality Commission regulations. The Planning Committee granted permission for a single-storey infill extension to the centre in July last year. Following this, detailed design work has been undertaken, including a review of compliance with building regulations. To achieve compliance with building regulations, a new emergency exit is required from the existing building. As a result, the internal layout of the extension had to be altered. This meant many of the approved doors, windows and roof lights were in the wrong position. So the purpose of this application is to seek approval to very minor changes to the position of doors and windows so they align with an internal layout that complies with building regulations. There is no change to the position of the extension. 2 small windows are proposed in the east elevation. Both are set well below the height of the existing boundary fence, and one is proposed to be obscure glazed. As a result, neither window would have any impact on the amenity of the adjacent residential property. In addition, the doors and roof lights do not result in any amenity or overlooking concerns. The existing air conditioning equipment is repositioned about 10 metres further away from the rear of the neighbouring property, reducing its impact. As presented in the officer's report, the proposals maintain the character of the area and have no material impact upon residential amenity. The changes allow sufficient natural light into each space, providing good quality internal areas, including the patient waiting room. The design complies with all relevant planning policies which support the proposed development. And finally, there is no impact on the car park or the approved access arrangements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Andy Wells. Can I open it up now to members, please? Alex.
Thank you, Chair. And as Councillor Harrison said, I've seen this more times than I've had hot dinners, I think. Whilst I can see there's not a material change in the layout for what was previously agreed, obviously there was a lot of issues around what would consider be, and what Mr. Edgecombe said was completely right at the last committee as well, about the potential for development creep, which is something that the committee should always be aware of when applications come forwards for. This is why we see the planning history in the reports. It's very important that we note what's going on over the last sort of few years. You know, you have planning permission, and 6 months later you put another one in, and all of a sudden you've got a humongous 17-storey skyscraper. But we'll go from there. I think in terms of the changes, it's something that I will vote for, because obviously there's no really any material changes. But I have noticed that there is a condition on the use of a storage building, so it's taken away pretty much, to make sure it's only being used for storage purposes. But to ensure that some of this sort of doesn't come back, can I suggest that we remove permitted development rights for this place for anything to do with what they may want to do with the roof? Whether that's to be with minor repositioning of something which whatever rights of PDA have in terms of the roof and the guttering layouts and things. So
I'm not sure whether we can do that. Perhaps Miranda.
Sorry, was that about the roof of the extension?
yeah, to remove permitted development rights for anything they may be allowed to do, like solar panels, etc., or things like that.
I think because it's commercial, they would need permission, and in any case, any alterations to what they've got approval for would have to come back to members. I think that's right, is it, Charles?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are prior approval rights for solar panels and things like that. It depends kind of what level of change you're interested in. If it's kind of increasing the height, then I think that would be covered by the approved plans. If it's like solar panels or something like that, then there are permitted development rights for that.
All right. In that case, no. Sorry. I know there are permitted development rights for things like that for energy, things like that. The problem with this building, of course, is that there's a one-storey extension and there's 2 stories. So can I suggest we remove the permitted development rights from a 2nd storey for install of panels? Would that be allowed, acceptable? Because then you're only looking at the 1st storey rather than the second.
Miranda. Charles.
Sorry, Councillor Myers. Removal of permitted development rights for solar panels.
Oh, because it will increase the height.
Right. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Mike? Chris? Vicky? No? Alex?
Yeah, thank you. Just on that suggestion of removing the permitted development rights. I mean, I understand exactly where you're coming from on this, Councillor Myers, but I feel like preventing them from building solar panels without it coming to the committee and sort of things like that is just going against really what I believe in. I feel that solar panels that would work on this property, and if the And we're not just talking about solar panels, we're talking about like, sort of other things that could work on that roof. Yeah, exactly. But I just feel that that's sort of restricting things that we should be encouraging, really. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it was an extra story on top of the building, then I'd be completely agreeing with you. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about sort of minor changes that would have a positive impact on the property. So I'm torn on that one. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear what other members think, if any of them if they have an opinion.
Thank you, Alex. Charles, you wanted to speak?
Yes, please. Yeah, I've just had a quick look at the legislation on this. So the permitted development rights for solar panels allow it wouldn't benefit from permitted development rights if it was more than 0.2 metres beyond the height of a pitch roof, or no more than a metre for a flat roof. So they're the controls at the moment for something to be permitted development.
Thank you, Charles.
It's a flat roof, isn't it? Other than the bit at the end, which is pitched.
Yeah.
So
Yes, it would be 3 metres high, the infill extension, and it's me just go something else. Which way? Yeah. So it's a flat roof, and then you've got the roof lights in there positioned above.
Right, so just to clarify that then, so obviously they'd be allowed, obviously I know with the pitch roof they'd be allowed to be, but in terms of the second storey, they would have to come back here anyway for permission. Because it's the tallest part of the building. They'd have to come back anyway, I believe.
Yes, because it wouldn't be in accordance with the approved plans if they wanted to amend that.
Anybody got any more questions? No? I'm quite happy with that. I do believe it's a dentist there and some sort of NHS facility, is it not? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can we go into the recommendation, please, which is that planning application number 24-01215 VAR be granted planning permission subject to the conditions set out in section 8.0 of this report, with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice. All those in favour, please show. We've got no abstentions, so it's granted. Thank you. We will go into item 7 now, which is the golf pod practice facility with times 10 covered bays, synthetic outfield of 30mm times 30mm and netting 30mm from the bays. Details include native wildflower seeding for the biodiversity net gain, BNG, at Basildon Sporting Village, Cranes Farm Road, Basildon. I think this is you, Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. As you mentioned, it's another application at the Basildon Sporting Village, Cranes Farm Road, Basildon, for a proposed golf pod practice facility incorporating 10 bays and a 30-metre by 30-metre outfield. This is the site location plan. As members know, Basildon Sporting Village is a modern sports and leisure centre located on the south side of Cranes Farm Road, north end of Gloucester Park. It's Basildon Council owned, but operated by everyone active on behalf of Sports Leisure Management. Members will recall, or those who were on the committee in July last year, that members approved a paddle ball tennis facility on a compound within the wider site to the east of the football ground in the sort of the middle area there. But as you can see, the application site is in red with the rest of the sports centre in blue. There's an aerial photo. The piece of land in question is to the northwest corner of the main leisure centre building, close to the main entrance and adjacent to a bowls club. It's sort of incidental grassland comprising a couple of planters and some paved areas. There's some site photos looking south with the sporting village on the left and the bowls club behind the hedge on the right, so the application site is the grassland in between. These are the existing and proposed site plans. As you can see, it's the bottom left, sorry, the left one shows the existing and the right shows the proposed with the 30 metre by 30 metre net enclosed outfield with the golf pods on the right in 10 bays. The grassland that would on the north and west side would be replaced by a wildflower planting. These are the proposed elevations. So there would be a sort of a large translucent sort of net that would be held up on 4 lattice steel supports of between 12 and 15 metres in height. You can see the Sporting Village building, which is 13 metres in height on the left. These are a couple of CGIs of the type of facility. And there's another CGI of how it would look through the gap in the trees from Cranes Farm Road towards the Sporting Village with the golf pods on the left. So you can see the translucent sort of net, so it doesn't reduce the openness of the land particularly. So the practice facility would incorporate 10 covered practice bays contained with a light white aluminium framed part open-sided structure that would measure just over 6 metres wide by 31 metres long by 4.3 metres high. These would face west and allow golf practice. It would be located on a relatively small section of the grasslands. No flood lighting is proposed. In terms of consultations, a site notice was displayed at the main entrance to the Sporting Village, and the adjacent bowls club were notified, which generated no comments. No objections have been raised by the Highway Authority, the Council's Property or Environmental Health Services, the Council's Communities and Health Services, Parks and Countryside Services, or the Council's Arboricultural Officer or County Ecology Team, subject to conditions. There was a poplar tree just out of shot on the left, which would require some minor trimming works, but the Arboricultural Officer is happy with that. An arboricultural impact assessment has been submitted with the application, and so long as the recommendations in that are followed, as I mentioned, the tree officer raises no objections. So the key issues are these relate to the impact of the development on Gloucester Park public open space, the design visual impact upon the amenities of any nearby properties, highways and parking considerations, ecology, drainage and health benefit considerations. In terms of the principle of the development, as I mentioned, the site and the Sporting Village more generally are within Gloucester Park public open space, where safe policy R1 states that within the urban areas, planning permission will not be granted for development of open space which would cause significant harm to the recreational or amenity value of the open space or the contribution which the open space makes to the character of the area within which it is located. In this instance, the site in question falls within the wider developed complex of Basildon Sporting Village Leisure Centre facility, comprising a relatively small area of incidental grassland to the north side of the leisure centre, between the existing car park, Gloucester Park Bowls Club and the Sporting Village main leisure centre building. As such, the site does not contribute in any meaningful way to the public use of the wider Gloucester Park public open space. In terms of the design, as I mentioned, the proposed 10-bay light light framed white aluminium golf pod structure and 12-metre high black translucent netting supported on 4 aluminium lattice supports up to 15 metres in height will be viewed against the backdrop of the existing 30-metre high leisure centre building. The translucent netting, together with its lightweight nature of the lattice supports and partly open-sided practice pod structure, with the green colour of the synthetic grass, would ensure the open green views through the site are maintained, whilst the provision of wildflower planting to the remaining north and west sides of the site would compensate for the loss of the grasslands and 2 planting beds controlled by condition. I think there would be a 28% biodiversity net gain. There's no immediate neighbours to be adversely affected. The facility would operate within the existing operating hours of the sporting village. There would be no jobs created as such, but it would improve the leisure centre offer available within the site. In terms of car parking, the facility would utilise the existing 500 space car park. No objection is raised by the Highway Authority. In addition, there would be health benefits, as it would encourage physical activity amongst the local population, promote social interaction and support healthy lifestyles, whilst diversifying the sporting offer available at the sporting village in accordance with MPPF objectives. So the planning balance, as I mentioned, it would diversify the sporting offer available at the sporting village, which is a moderate positive. There would be moderate economic benefits through the construction. It would promote social interaction, which is a limited positive, promote physical activity and healthy lifestyles amongst the local population, a moderate positive, ecological enhancements through the proposed wildflower planting. The negative obviously entails some development upon and some loss of openness to the public open space, but given its contribution to the wider across the park, we feel that the negatives are outweighed by the positives in this instance. It's therefore recommended to members that the application be granted subject to the conditions set out on pages 239 to 240 of the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Gordon. Any clarifications? Anyone? No one? No. Well, I think we can go straight into the recommendation then. Unless anybody wants to speak on it. No. I think probably it's a good use of spare land. It covers all the sports that we do over at the sporting village. I don't think we do any golf, so, you know, it's something that might appeal to somebody. And people only walk over it, so I think it's a good idea. So we go straight into the recommendation. The planning application number 24014964 be granted conditional planning permission subject to the planning conditions set out in the end of the report. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, everyone. That's granted. So I think we'll go on to item 8 now, which is application 240103884, new pedestrian gate and pathway onto Rice Park with safeguarding boundary fence and external work at St Anne Line Roman Catholic Infant School, Whitcay, Basildon, Essex, SS155AF. And I think that is, I think it's you, Miranda, isn't it? Yes? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed application is seeking planning permission for a footpath within the school grounds, which will connect to a short pathway and pedestrian gate outside at Rice Park with safeguarding fencing. We move to the site location plan slide. The application site, which is outlined in red, comprises an existing school with existing buildings and play areas. To the left is Rice Park, and this is the area where the perimeter path will come out at Rice Park. And this line of buildings along the left-hand boundary along here are the existing garages. If we move to the aerial slide, we've marked the proposed location of the path in yellow for you to see clearly. So the path is in the majority within the school grounds, and it runs along the rear of the garages within the school ground, joins up with the existing perimeter fence where proposed pedestrian gates will be inserted, and then you've got a section of path leading out to Rise Park. Both photos are within the school grounds, which show the location of the path, and you have, in the first photograph, you have the existing back of the garages in the distance there, and on the right hand side of the photograph you have the back of the garages, and you can see that the path has already been prepared and has partly started work on site. On the left, this is the area where the path will come out on the pavement at Rise Park, and on the right hand side you have the edge of the garage, and that's the location where the small section of path will come out from. And that just shows the existing garages at Rise Park there. The proposed site plan shows the footpath in more detail. So you've got the existing school grounds here, and the path will run along the back of the existing garages, which are located here. Existing fencing and the gate, and then the footpath continues out onto Rise Park. And then we have the elevation of the proposed pedestrian gate, which will be 2 metres, and the colour will be green. So in terms of the key considerations relate to the principle of the development, impact the existing open space, the design of the development, impact upon neighbouring occupiers, car parking and highway safety. In terms of the principle of the development, the pathway is required to provide a safe and secure route to the nursery building at the rear of the site, which parents can access directly. The planning statement states that the current arrangement has a high safeguarding risk. The proposed secure gate would only be in use for a limited number of parents and a limited time. In terms of the impact to open space and playing fields, the location of the proposed pathway is shown to be within the playing field and other open space of the existing school as per the proposal's map of the adopted local plan. However, the exact position of the path will be adjacent to the existing perimeter of the school grounds, and as such will not result in significant harm to the recreational or amenity value of the open space. As such, it is considered that the path will not adversely affect the provision of playing fields, and the school still has provision of sufficient outdoor play area and space. In terms of design, the majority of the proposed path and works will not be visible within the public domain, as is located within school land. The new pedestrian gate will be set back where the existing boundary fence is. The proposed section of the path from the pedestrian gate to the existing pavement at Rise Park is approximately 8.9 metres and 2 metres wide. Given the proposed location, the path is not considered to be visually intrusive within the street scene. In terms of impact to neighbouring properties, various objections have been received in relation to traffic issues, and also that works have already started on site. The proposed path is set away from existing residential dwellings and is not considered to result in adverse impacts in terms of noise and disturbance issues. In terms of car parking and highway safety, Essex Highways Authority raised no objection to the application on highway safety grounds, and they've recommended conditions regarding proposed pedestrian barrier, and that no unbound material should be used for the pedestrian access to avoid the displacement of loose material onto the highway, and these have been included in the officer's recommendation. The proposed pathway and pedestrian gate is considered to provide acceptable separation distances from adjacent residential properties to prevent adverse impacts to the residential amenities. The proposed pathway and pedestrian gate will not result in adverse loss of open space or adversely affect the character of the locality, and raises no highway safety implications. As such, the proposal is considered to be compliant with the criteria of safe policy BAS R1 and the aims of paragraph 135 of the NPPF 2024. The application is therefore recommended to members for approval, subject to the conditions listed on pages 252 and 253 of the officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Miranda. Have we any clarifications from Miranda at all? Mark?
Thank you. Yeah, just looking at some of the points, I live near a school myself, so looking at some of the points that have been raised about traffic assessments, has there been any kind of traffic assessment to see the impact that it will have or could have on parents parking in that part rather than going to where they currently park, going to the school?
Through you, Chair, no traffic assessment has been made apart from the one that Essex Highways Authority has made on the basis that it's a pedestrian gate and we have limited times and for a limited number of parents getting access only to the nursery school on the site. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll go into questions now. Is there any questions now? Anybody want to make any statements? Anybody? No? Okay. So I haven't got any problem with this. It means the children are exercising well and there's not cars everywhere from the parents. I think it's a really good thing. So I'm quite happy with that. I'll go straight into the recommendation that planning application 2401-1038 full be granted planning permission subject to the conditions set out at section 8.0 of this report with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, everyone. That's granted. Thank you. And I think we've come to the end now, and I want to thank all the people that substituted tonight. Thank you very much. And safe journey home. And thank the officers. It's been a long evening. Thank you.